Hey everyone, this is actually a story, especially if you're one of those people that care and have a lot of concern for your aging or elderly parents or grandparents. This story actually definitely resonated with me, and I'm sure it will for a lot of you as well. And at the same time, I couldn't help but notice that in the sub-portion of this particular headline, the word or the term libertarian is being tossed around once again. Take it from a guy that's been paying a lot of attention for a long time in regards to Canadian politics or media publications. And the very word or term libertarian, you didn't hear that at all. If you had asked most Canadians just maybe 10 years ago what libertarian was, they'd be like, oh, I don't know, I never heard of it. Fast forward to today, thanks to people like Ron Paul in the US, or even, hey, like give myself a little pat on the back there, but no, seriously though, but even a lot of us out there who are libertarians are quite vocal and willing to challenge the status quo and say what a lot of people truly think in their mind, but maybe don't have the ability or capacity to articulate it. A lot of people are coming around today saying, yeah, I love the idea of what libertarians stand for. Individual liberty, personal responsibility, non-violence, as in the non-aggression principle, self-ownership, property rights. I mean, these are things, like I say, you as a person, if you're a decent person anyways, chances are you probably live like a libertarian in your own social or economic lives. You probably don't use preemptive force or violence. You probably don't try to impose your will, your preferences, or your opinions on people. You probably deal with each other or people that you deal with in a voluntary manner, in a cooperative manner, and respect each other for their individuality. I think most people actually do that. Actually, even kids, you know, once you get to about 5, 6 years old, most kids even act out and socialize with that libertarian mentality or philosophy. And that's because Christianity, especially the New Testament, talks about and promotes the very same respect of the individual and being free from force or coercion. That's why free market capitalism and Christianity work so well together. Christianity gave your moral compass. Capitalism gave your economic abilities or potential, but they were both conducive to voluntary interactions and exchanges. No force needed. And you know, obviously, Canadians, or anyone for that matter, usually mostly prefer to deal with each other in a voluntary basis, not by using the big gigantic gun in the room, or using threats of violence or force. But yeah, when I heard about this, even just, what was it, a couple of years ago, maybe not even a couple of years, when I heard about this legalization of basically what Barbara Kay is referencing here is euthanasia in Canada, I thought, yeah, that's a slippery slope that could definitely go the wrong way. So I'm going to be referencing this article out of National Post, like I say, Barbara Kay, headline, "The Euthanasia Slippery Slope is Here. I hold rather libertarian views on an informed adult's right to assisted suicide, but I am deeply opposed to such acts being carried out by the state." As you rightfully should, Barbara, because you're obviously a moral and compassionate person who thinks critically about these kind of stories or issues. Last week marked the 4-year anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling that validated medical assistance in dying. MAID. What a name, right? MAID. Anyways, at the time, many enthusiasts confidently predicted there would be no slippery slope towards abuses. Since the procedure was being justified on the basis of self-determination, consent, it was strenuously affirmed, would be de rigueur. As Andrew Coyne put it in a June 2016 column, when the subject is as priceless as a human life, it is not enough that consent usually be obtained. It must be in every case. It will not suffice if the safeguards are adequate. They must be perfect. But since the right to be killed by medical practitioners paid by the state has now been normalized, individuals are stepping forward, as any student of human nature and observer of the euthanasia histories of Belgium and the Netherlands might have predicted, to demand custom tailoring of that right. Audrey Parker, a Halifax woman with terminal cancer who was assisted to death on November 1st, weeks earlier than she wished, left a video released last week by Dying with Dignity Canada. In it, she said she would have preferred to stay alive until Christmas, but worried that her cancer, creeping to the lining of her brain, would render her unfit by then to invoke MAID. She asked for a Parker's amendment in the law allowing for a proxy to facilitate a previously sworn request in such circumstances. It sounds reasonable. All safeguard abrogations do when they are attached to sympathetic protagonists with a black and white narrative. They are less palatable, though, when attached to muddier stories. Like the case of a Dutch woman with dementia who'd signed a living will endorsing euthanasia when of sound mind, but then, when the time came, struggling against the needle, had to be held down by relatives as the doctor killed her. So anyways, folks, yeah, I don't want to get too deep in this, but yeah, I am really concerned about this too. I mean, it would be an easy thing, right? For this slippery slope to get really steep to the point where, yeah, you could just start to kill off a whole lot of Canadians, especially when you start to get into the economics of it, right? And we do understand that there's an overarching big economic fundamental that Canadians have been so far, or most Canadians have been so far, trying to ignore or reject. But there is a huge economic fundamental and factor involved with Canadians as far as like unfunded liabilities, entitlements, pension plans, health care benefits. I mean, this is definitely a slippery slope that we should not, like, central planners shouldn't have this ability, folks. Like, once again, it comes back to, which is what I guess why Barbara was saying, individual, the respect of the individual, libertarianism. That's why it's so important, folks. You know, you can't just collectivize this kind of stuff. You just can't throw people under the same proverbial bus. You have to treat each and every individual and respect them for the fact that they are an individual. Thanks for covering this story, Barbara. And once again, I'm sure it'll resonate with a lot of Canadians out there, because there are definitely a lot of us that are seeing our aging and elderly parents and grandparents that may very well be placed in these kind of precarious situations going forward. And it's something we definitely want to deal with now rather than later. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.